Hey there, listening squirrels. Got a ponytail that wants to flop in front of my face. Driving me crazy. Chapter 10, Part 2 of By the Pricking of My Thumbs. Agatha Christie. A Tommy and Tuppence Mystery. The faithful Albert opened the front door with a beaming smile of welcome. Glad to see you back, sir. I'm glad to be back. Tommy surrendered his suitcase. Where's Mrs. Beresford? Not back yet, sir. Do you mean she's away? Been away 3 or 4 days, but she'll be back for dinner. She rang up yesterday and said so, and thank God she did, 'cause now who knows where she is. What's she up to, Albert? I couldn't say, sir. She took the car, but she took a lot of railway guides as well. She might be anywhere, as you might say. You might indeed, said Tommy with feeling. John O'Groats or Land's End, and probably missed the connection at Little Dither on the marsh on the way back. God bless British Railways. She rang up yesterday, you say. Did she say where she was ringing from? She didn't say. What time yesterday was this? Yesterday morning before lunch. Just said everything was all right. She wasn't quite sure what time she'd get home, but she thought she'd be back well before dinner and suggested a chicken. That do you all right, sir? Yes, said Tommy, regarding his watch, but she'll have to make it pretty quickly now. I'll hold the chicken back, said Albert. Tommy grinned. That's right, he said. Catch it by the tail. How have you been, Albert? All well at home? Had a scare of measles, but it's all right. Doctor says it's only strawberry rash. Good, said Tommy. He went upstairs whistling a tune to himself. He went into the bathroom, shaved and washed, strode from there into the bedroom and looked around him. It had that curious look of disoccupancy some bedrooms put on when their owner is away. Its atmosphere was cold and unfriendly. Everything was scrupulously tidy and scrupulously clean. Tommy had the depressed feeling that a faithful dog might have had. Looking round him, he thought it was as though Tuppence had never been. No spilled powder, no book cast down, open from its back, splayed out. Sir? It was Albert standing in the doorway. Well? I'm getting worried about the chicken. Oh, damn the chicken, said Tommy. You seem to have that chicken on your nerves. Well, I took it as you and she wouldn't be later than 8. Not later than... Well, I took it as you and she wouldn't be later than 8. Not later than 8, sitting down, I mean. I should have thought so too, said Tommy, glancing at his wrist watch. Good Lord, is it nearly 25 to 9? Yes, it is, sir. And the chicken. Oh, come on, said Tommy. You get that chicken out of the oven and you and I'll eat it between us. Serve Tuppence right, getting back well before dinner, indeed. Of course, some people do eat dinner late, said Albert. I went to Spain once, and believe me, you couldn't get a meal before 10 o'clock. 10 p.m., I ask you. Heathens. All right, said Tommy absent-mindedly. By the way, have you no idea where she's been all this time? You mean the missus? I don't know, sir. Rushing around, I'd say. Her first idea was going to places by train, as far as I could make out. She was always looking in ABCs and timetables and things. Well, said Tommy, we have our ways of amusing ourselves, I suppose. Hers seems to have been railway travel. I wonder where she is all the same. Sitting in the ladies' waiting room at Little Dither on the march, as likely as not. She knew as you was coming home today, though, didn't she, sir? Said Albert. She'll get here somehow, sure to. Tommy perceived that he was being offered loyal allegiance. He and Albert were linked together in expressing disapprobation of a Tuppence who in the course of her flirtations with British Railways was neglecting to come home in time to give a returning husband his proper welcome. Oh my my gosh. My feet. Albert went away to release the chicken from its possible fate of cremation in the oven. Tommy, who had been about to follow him, stopped and looked towards the mantelpiece. He walked slowly to it and looked at the picture that hung there. Funny, her being so sure she had seen that particular house before. Tommy felt quite certain that he hadn't seen it. Anyway, it was quite an ordinary house. There must be plenty of houses like that. He stretched up as far as he could towards it, then, still not able to get a good view, unhooked it and took it close to the electric lamp. A quiet, gentle house. There was the artist's signature. The name began with a B, though he couldn't make out exactly what the name was. Bosworth? Bouchier? He'd get a magnifying glass and look at it more closely. A merry chime of cowbells came from the hall. Albert had highly approved of the Swiss cowbells that Tommy and Tuppence had brought back some time or other from Grindelwald. He was something of a virtuoso then. Dinner was served. Tommy went to the dining room. It was odd, he thought, that Tuppence hadn't turned up by now. Even if she'd had a puncture, which seemed probable, he rather wondered that she hadn't rung up to explain or excuse her delay. A puncture. A flat. Oh, get this turned around right. Cheers, Mountain Dew. And this lovely cup that Marcel Boo, one virtuous woman, made me. She's so sweet. She might know that I'd worry, said Tommy to himself. Not, of course, that he ever did worry, not about Tuppence. Tuppence was always all right. Albert contradicted this mood. Hope she hasn't had an accident, he remarked, presenting Tommy with a dish of cabbage and shaking his head gloomily. Take that away. You know I hate cabbage, said Tommy. Why should she have had an accident? It's only 9:30 now. Being on the road is plain murder nowadays, said Albert. Anybody might have an accident. He's not doing much to help. The telephone bell rang. That's her, said Albert, hastily reposing the dish of cabbage on the sideboard. He hurried out of the room. Tommy rose, abandoning his plate of chicken, and followed Albert. He was just saying, "Here, I'll take it," when Albert spoke. "Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Beerford is at home. Here he is now." He turned his head to Tommy. "It's a Dr. Murray for you, sir." Dr. Murray? Tommy thought for a moment. The name seemed familiar, but for the moment he couldn't remember who Dr. Murray was. If Tuppence had had an accident, and then with a sigh of relief he remembered that Dr. Murray had been the doctor who attended the old ladies at Sunny Ridge. Something, perhaps, to do with Aunt Ada's funeral forms. True child of his time, Tommy immediately assumed that it must be a question of some form or other, something he ought to have signed, or Dr. Murray ought to have something he ought to have signed, or Dr. Murray ought to have signed. "Hello," he said. "Beersford here." "Oh, I'm glad to catch you. You remember me, I hope. I attended your aunt, Miss Fanshawe." "Yes, of course I remember. What can I do?" "I really wanted to have a word or two with you sometime. I don't know if we can arrange a meeting, perhaps, in town one day." "Oh, I expect so. Yes, quite easily. But is it something you can't say over the phone?" "I'd rather not say it over the phone. There's no immediate hurry. I won't pretend there is, but I should like to have a chat with you." "Nothing wrong?" said Tommy, and wondered why he put it that way. Why should there be anything wrong? "Not really. I may be making a mountain out of a molehill, probably am, but there have been some rather curious developments at Sunny Ridge." Lancaster, that was that lady's name. I was thinking it started with C. Nothing to do with Mrs. Lancaster, is it? Asked Tommy. Mrs. Lancaster? The doctor seemed surprised. Oh, no. She left some time ago, in fact, before your aunt died. This is something quite different. I've been away, only just got back. May I ring you up tomorrow morning? We could fix something then. Right, I'll give you my phone number. I shall be at my surgery until 10 a.m. Bad news? Asked Albert as Tommy returned to the dining room. For God's sakes, don't croak, Albert, said Tommy irritably. No, of course it isn't bad news. I thought perhaps the Mrs. She's all right, said Tommy. She always is. Probably gone herring off after some wildcat clue or other. You know what she's like. I'm not going to worry any more. Take away this plate of chicken. You've been keeping it hot in the oven and it's inedible. Bring me some coffee, then I'm going to bed. There'll probably be a letter tomorrow, delayed in the post. You know what our posts are like, or there'll be a wire from her, or she'll ring up. But there was no letter. Next day, no telephone call, no wire. Albert eyed Tommy, opened his mouth and shut it again several times, judging quite rightly that gloomy predictions on his part would not be welcomed. At last Tommy had pity on him. He swallowed a last mouthful of toast and marmalade, washed it down with coffee, and spoke. All right, Albert, I'll say it first. Where is she? What's happened to her, and what are we going to do about it? Get on to the police, sir? I'm not sure, you see. Tommy paused. If she's had an accident, she's got her driving license on her and plenty of identifying papers. Hospitals are very prompt at reporting these things and getting in touch with relatives, all that. I don't want to precipitate. She mightn't want it. Precipitate? I suppose it is. You've no idea at all, Albert, where she was going? Nothing, she said. No particular place or country, not a mention of some name? Albert shook his head. Was she feeling like pleased, excited, unhappy, worried? Albert's response was immediate. Pleased as punch, bursting with it. Like a terrier off on the trail, said Tommy. That's right, sir. You know how she gets. On to something. Now I wonder, Tommy paused in consideration. Something had turned up, and it was as he just said to Albert. Tuppence had rushed off like a terrier on the scent. The day before yesterday she had rung up to announce her return. Why then hadn't she returned? Perhaps at that moment, thought Tommy, she's sitting somewhere telling lies to people so hard she can't think of anything else. If she were engrossed in pursuit, she would be extremely annoyed if he, Tommy, were to rush off to the police, bleating like a sheep that his wife had disappeared. He could hear Tuppence saying, How you could be so fatuous as to do such a thing. I can look after myself perfectly. You ought to know that by this time. But could she look after herself? One was never quite sure where Tuppence's imagination could take her. Into danger? There hadn't, so far, been any evidence of danger in this business except as aforesaid in Tuppence's imagination. If he were to go to the police, seeing his wife had not returned home as she announced she was going to do, the police would sit there looking tactful, though possibly grinning inwardly, and would then presumably, still in a tactful way, ask what men friends his wife had got. I'll find her myself, declared Tommy. She's somewhere, whether it's north, south, east, or west, I've no idea. And she was a silly cuckoo not to leave word when she rang up where she was. A gang's got her, perhaps? Said Albert. Oh, be your age, Albert. You've outgrown that sort of stuff years ago. Well, what are you going to do, sir? I'm going to London, said Tommy, glancing at the clock. First, I'm going to have lunch at my club with Dr. Murray, who rang me up last night, and who's got something to say to me about my late deceased aunt's affairs, I might possibly get a useful hint from him. After all, this business started at Sunny Ridge. I'm also taking that picture that's hanging over our bedroom mantelpiece up with me. You mean you're taking it to Scotland Yard? No, said Tommy, I'm taking it to Bond Street. Bond. James Bond. Didn't say that. And that is all of chapter 10. 11, that we'll get to hopefully tomorrow, is called Bond Street and Dr. Murray. I wonder what Dr. Murray's going to say. That she'd been there asking questions. Well, we'll find out hopefully tomorrow. Manana. I'm hoping Dana CCC, Creatively Created Crochet, is going to come on today with making meat. But if not, I may come on. I may. Look, I still have this. I'm almost done. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 stitches. See you soon. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.